Everybody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are back, and then let me. By the way, so generally this machine or EC2 machine is configured to disconnect mostly when we use our home network. So what we do just to avoid that, because while you're practicing, you go to settings, go to connections, change this to 15 number. So save back. This will stop us losing our session every time whenever that idle time is exceeded. Yeah. So we were talking about that this particular Apache edition is running here. Now, in case if I want to have the other Apache instances which we downloaded from Amazon also as to up and running. So can I do that? Generally not possible, because both are required port 80. So what we do, we just go to the configuration of the Apache edition and modify that particular port to some other free port. So I know the path that the one.
मैं question mark करके प्रियंका to confirm कर.
Yeah, just go and mute the people.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
मिल दास का तो है.
Yeah.
Okay. What?
I'll just put unmute everyone. I know no one wants to do that willingly, but yeah, it happens. Yeah.
In Zoom, you automatically get unmuted when you join.
Correct. That's true. Yeah. All right. So how do we change the port number? So here, because this is etc HTTP configuration, which is a default location. So which is Amazon Apache edition. We have this main configuration file called htp.com. So today I'll request you that whenever you have some time, visit this configuration file. Interesting configuration file, which is around 1010 lines. If you really want to become an expert in Apache or web server editions. So this just is a self-explanatory file. Spend some time. You don't need to, not more than 4 or 5 minutes. You'll be understanding what is exactly this stuff. Because in DevOps, mostly we will be dealing with this kind of web servers and all the stuff. Which is a primary thing whenever we want to access application. It can be internal application like your pay slips or leave applications, or external client applications. In case Nginx or Apache is used as a web server, it is required for you to be familiarized with these settings. So always troubleshooting starts from here. Okay, now I just came to this file. So it is listening on port 80 by default. So in case I want to change this because I want to start 2 ports, I'll change this to some free port 81. Now, what is the above line? This is binding an IP. In case my server having multiple IP address, so I would like to run both these Apache editions, listening only on using 2 different IPs, but binding to 2 different ports. I'm sorry, when I say 2 different IPs with the same port number. So in those cases, I will uncomment this particular line. I will change this IP to the other IP. So I'll be having another NIC card. NIC card means like a network interface card. Those who are not from infra background, also for them. So like in the server side data centers, we'll be having this RJ45 cable. So that cable separate like Nick code will be there. So that IP will be separately working here. By the way, interesting question. Internet runs on which protocol? Anyone wants to answer? Internet runs on which protocol? TCP/IP. Yeah, TCP/IP protocol, right? So we will be configuring this Nick, all that particular TCP/IP protocol. Fine. So this is the binding IP here, which I just changed this to 81 because I don't have multiple IPs for this public machine, which is spent up in cloud. Now just scroll down. So these are all the configuration files which are there in this particular folder, which we'll be referring. And this is the username through which this Apache edition is running. So also the directory paths, document root. Now this is where the welcome page will be there. You got that welcome page, right? So all that, where is exactly that website has to be deployed. So this is the document root. So in case if I want to modify this path, you can come here and we can visit and change this thing. And then error log, different types of error logs. So I remember so I was actually working with a solution with one of the cybersecurity government agency. So wherein the requirement is that they also would like to capture the IP address of the people who are visiting that particular website. I think it was a crime. So in the log format, so what we call it, we have to have source IP. Yeah, just comment muted. So in the log format, the source IP has to be captured. So that is a requirement. So it just came. So what we did, we just went to this log format, which is there in the this particular hdp.com, and I referred to the documentation of this particular software, and I came to know that a percentile A is required. So source IP has to be captured. So I just added the log format. So what is my log name here? Combine common. So I can define my own log format. So the source IP is also captured. Set as a social networking, some investigation has to be done. So that was the requirement from their side, kind of stuff. So similarly, you can do many things here for troubleshooting purpose. Of course, we are not working in crime department here, but I just want to let you know that you have all the options available. So all plain text format. And also, just scroll down, you can look at the error documentation, but for direction purpose, everything is there. So we did only one change, that is port number, and then I just modified this one. Now, let me start this Apache as well. So this Apache is also now started. Now let me just check it out how many editions Apache instances is running. So one is this one, the default package, and one which we built. So if I want to access this particular stuff, because I only have one public IP, so what I will be doing, I'll be visiting the that page, because I know it is listening on 81. I'll be suffixing the IP address with 81. So this is another Apache instance. So what it is trying to give a message to us saying that you can install multiple Apache instances in the server, and each edition can run on a different port number. So you have that advantage with open source software. For example, if I ask you to install MS Office, multiple editions on the same laptop, very difficult, right? Let me say that the previous edition is already there. But in Linux and open source, we don't have that restrictions here. So it is, you can compile and you can build your own packages as well. Now, in case if I want to run both on the same port number, you need multiple dedicated IP. So you can get one more IP and assign to the server. So one IP will be one Apache will be binded, and the other IP will be other Apache will be binded. So that is fine. We don't want to spend too much time on that thing. Anyway, So hope you got an idea about what do you mean by build, what do you mean by a web server here. Now, fine. This is JBoss or Tomcat. These are all app servers. This is where actually the applications will be deployed. And mostly Java flavor will be discussing on sessions. So I'm going to download this Tomcat, which is a lightweight application server for our DevOps tools and technology purposes. That will be more than sufficient to understand this Tomcat. So it's an application server. Now the question is, what is the difference between a web server and app server? So some of you already might be knowing this thing, but for benefit of everyone, a static website or application, if you want to access, let's say, a news website, Times of India. So it's a static page. So what do you mean by static page? There is no dynamic data in news generally. So of course hyperlinks will be there, but when you click on the thing, it is just a redirecting to another page. So example for dynamic data, for example, when you log into your banking portal, you select a date range to display a statement. So let's say last quarter report I have to generate in my banking portal. So then that data will not be there in your web server, right? It is there in your database server. So the developer might have written a query which will be running in the app server, which will process by fetching your data from the database, and which will generate the page on your app server using the query in a nice tabular format and supply the data back to the web server. So that kind of applications we call as dynamic applications. So app server can host both static and dynamic applications. So you need app servers if it is a dynamic content based applications for banking purpose, banking applications, or even in a stock IoT buying and purchasing, those applications, your share card or any what do you call ICICI Direct. So these are all trading applications, right? So these are all require these kind of servers. So mostly all the finance based applications will be using generally, by the way, all enterprise application servers. So for example, WebLogic. WebLogic is from which company? Anybody knows? It is from Oracle. Earlier it was Sun Microsystem. It is now owned by Oracle. So we have to buy the license from Oracle. Likewise, WebSphere. It is from IBM. Yeah. So WebSphere is another EAP, Enterprise App Servers, EAS, and JBoss. It is owned by Red Hat. Of course, again, there's a different story that Red Hat is acquired by IBM. But again, JBoss is from Red Hat. That is also an enterprise server. Tomcat is a lightweight, free, open source application service, again, from your Apache Software Foundation. So internally, generally, most of the company, what they do for internal use, employees related stuff. For example, they want to manage our attendance, leaves, and all this stuff. In case if they have any that kind of applications, let's say internal social networking. Mostly they will not go for licensed based enterprise servers. They will be going with this kind of Tomcat or Glassfish kind of applications. So that is little background about the app servers. Now coming back to Tomcat, which is written in Java. So what is the prerequisites to install Tomcat app servers? We need Java, JDK, what we call it as. So is it there available in my machine? I want to just check it out, the JRER Java. So just set Java space version. Mostly in Linux, right? It will be generally will be available. So in case if it is not available, you can easily install from your repository. So JDK is a Java development kit. To compile a Java program, you need JDK. But just to run a Java application, you just need a JRE, Java runtime environment. So I just want to see whether it is available in my what do you call Amazon repository or not. So mlist pipedrive Java. So I just checking whether it is available. Yeah, it is available. So I'm just going with one randomly. I'll go with 1.8 edition. So I can get 1.7 as well. Latest edition is, of course, 11 is also there. Might be knowing Oracle anyway withdrawn this open source software. They said like, you need to also buy the license. That's the reason most of the companies nowadays, they're not using Java as their programming languages. Instead, they're using, they're trying, exploring different languages, because we never know what Oracle can do in the future. So that's a little story. There's a business story anyway here. Now I'm just not trying to download one sample randomly. I'm selecting one Java software, which is there in my Amazon repository here. So otherwise, again, you have to visit the OpenJDK tool and all that stuff has to be done. So in the interest of time, I'm just installing from my Amazon repository. Install the package. It's already there. So it's JDK, but you also can download JRE as well. So now just check it out. Yeah. So my Java is there, version 1.8. So the prerequisite is installed, which can now will not interrupt in installing our application, lightweight application server called Tomcat. So which is again from Apache Software Foundation. Again, from where I can download. So you can download by original website. Right? I have demonstrated one source code installation also. Right? So that way also you can do that. Or because we already know all that process, now I just want to install from our Amazon repository. Mlist mygrip Tomcat. So let me also give you the commands, by the way, guys, after installing this thing. So I have a lot of editions. I'm just installing the default edition called Tomcat. Install Tomcat. So that's it. So my Tomcat is installed now. Let me share the commands, those who are doing along with me. So these are the commands which we did. Installing Java and then install the Tomcat. So by default, this application service generally listens on port 8080 kind of thing. So I want to see whether port 8080 is free or not, so that I can start my Tomcat service. So let's type TNLP pipe 8080. So there is no program is listening or running on this port. So it is free. So let me start my service Tomcat space start. So is it running now? Let's check it out. PS here, pipe Tomcat process running. Yes. So I want to see in which port it is listening. So next -TNLP. So grep, what's the process ID number? Process ID number is 2289. So it is listening on, yes, 8080. You also have 8005, which is shutdown port. Yeah. So that is fine. 8080 is listening. So where it is exactly installed. So if you want to know the folder, you can list it, check it out here only. The process C command only. It is installed under this folder, user share Tomcat. Okay, so let me go to the folder, user share Tomcat. So what are there inside that? Inside we have a lot of folders, like your web server, etc HTTP conference. So here also we have a lot of folders. One is bin, mostly the binaries of the server, app server might have been deployed over there. This is the configuration folder. Mostly the main configuration folders will be there. All global libraries, and these are the different logs available inside this folder. Cache, and this is where the actual applications will be deployed. So multiple applications you can deploy in this app server. For example, like an ICICI, HDFC. I'm just giving you those banking examples because which is very popular not by everyone. That's the reason. This is work is a temporary cache of app server. So let me just first of all go to web apps, see if there are any sample applications applied. I want to access it from outside. No, it's empty. This web apps folder don't have any applications. So let me get some sample applications to be installed on this Tomcat the web apps folder so that I can access from outside. So yeah, where can I get again? I mean, from Tomcat only, there are some packages available for sample applications deployment and testing purpose. So let me just see whether it is available or not. Tomcat-web apps. So it is installing some sample applications. Yeah. So I'm where I am under web apps folder. User share Tomcat web apps. How many sample applications are there? I think some sample route. Mostly in DevOps, I will be using this. So how do you access this from outside? So we anyway have this public AP, right? So this is my public IP, and I know it is listening on port 8080. So what I'm doing, I'm going to use the public IP colon 8080. Just hit. Yeah, we got this welcome Tomcat home page. Now I want to access that sample application called examples. So put a slash examples. There's some sample applications also there. Some JSP, some servlet examples, etc. Here. So I'll come back to your this thing model Prerequisite. So we have installed a web server, we have installed app server, everything on single node. That's okay. This is only for demonstration learning purpose, right? But I'm not bothered about that. But we generally will be deploying in multiple servers layers. Web server is a lightweight, right? The thin machine will be taking generally. App server is a fat layer. So why are we saying that web server is a lightweight? Because it acts like a traffic police. It just receives the request and route the request to the app server. Nothing it will do more than that. So that's the reason why generally people will call that web service requires very less resources in terms of CPU memory. So you don't need to worry about like having a very powerful machine for web server until unless there is a need. Yeah. So those conditions apply. So here, what we did, we configured a Tomcat server also here, and we also configured a web server also. And then we are trying to access this web server separately. We are trying to access this app server separately. But in real time, generally, when we set up a configuration like this thing diagram, service design team will be there. It is not our role as a DevOps engineer or cloud engineer. What they do, they generally will be configuring a firewall here. So why? So what is exactly firewall? The people we really don't know. Firewall by default stops traffic coming into this layer network. So you need to explicitly define what is your source IP and destination IP along with the port. So this is managed by the way, network team. It is as a DevOps or application support engineering in earlier days. We used to raise a request with them that a template. So we used to call that as a firewall rule, or some companies we call as like hole, having a hole inside the firewall. I mean different names. That's a style of those their company culture, how they used to call that name. Anyway, yeah. So we also used to have multiple firewalls even it's outside here also. That is a different story. But the people are new to this firewall this thing. Yeah, this is the naming conventions we'll be using here. So now then that is understood, but how to access this application from outside then? Yeah, you'll be opening the firewall and all these things. But the most important thing is you have to route this application to the here from here. So this generally will not be having public access graph servers. So even when we visit sba.com or your HDFC or ICICI, so it actually go to their web server. It will not directly go to their app servers, which is having a running their own private IP job. So from web server, it will be redirected to the app servers. So there are some internal mechanism available in Apache which can do that particular routing. So one of that is reverse proxy. But I would like to stop at this moment. So take up some questions from you, just in case whether you're following or not. Any questions from anyone? Or if it is something like if this, go ahead. So yeah, I assume that the silence was that yeah, everybody is going to follow.
Raghu, just wanted to check, guys. Are people doing this in parallel, or are we waiting for the recording to come later and you're going to practice? Are you guys doing it in parallel, or you're holding back right now, just listening to what Raghu is saying? And do we have the clear understanding about web servers and app servers, what he's spoken about right now? Do we have the clear understanding? If not, we can ask questions. If not, we can also note down these questions as you practice over the evening or tomorrow morning, whenever you can, and then come to the next class and ask those questions. That's not a problem.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So feel free to ask any questions. A doubt is a doubt, whether it is a silly doubt or a complex doubt, immaterial. So training, we're all here to fill our gaps in upscaling, right? So because slowly what we do, we'll be going to the complex topics in the sessions. So because these are very extremely simple topics, but our examples like when automation, all these things which we'll be doing right in the future. So these are all based on this thing. So that is the reason I'm just trying to stress on these topics also. Okay, fine. Now, so let's talk about that reverse proxy now. So why do we need reverse proxy? I was talking about that example, right? Our banking applications. App servers mostly will not be exposed to the outer world. It's a web server which will be exposed. So you might have heard about like what do you call single sign authentication. Whenever you try to access your payslip, first thing is it will be asking your credentials. Once that is passed, then only it will be routing back into the web server, then back into the app server from where you can access your payslips and all that stuff. So that is an authentication, authorization. Everything will be happening at this layer, web layers. So again, SSO is a separate topic, which anyway it's out of scope for us. Single sign authentication, but just in case if you want to know about that, just introduce that. Even when you try to access your Gmail, first thing is what it asks your user ID and password. So mostly company what they do, they generally maintain that in a LDAP or SSO kind of authentication. So whenever you hit your Gmail, first thing is it will be sending that request to this environment. It's a very big environment. where it will be authenticated the user password, and then once it's authenticated, then what are the things you have access? That is called authorization. Once everything is done, then only it will tell this web server, okay, I think it's a valid user, and these are the things which is having access. So what is that he is trying to access? Okay, he is trying to access, let's say, credit card module. Yes, he is having access, then it will be allowed. So token based again. Yeah, anyway, it's an out of scope, but just for your knowledge purpose. So this particular routing and all this thing, there are like advanced topics are available, but we're only talking about the reverse proxy. Yeah. Now, that what do you mean by reverse proxy? So I'll take one more diagram. Very simple, extremely simple. Two boxes. One is web server. One is your app server. So when you hit your web server, okay, assume that this is your public facing. It's public facing. So whenever you hit your web server, so first thing it will do what? It will route the request to the app server. So here source and destination is, this is your laptop. Assume that your laptop, this is. So this will be your source. Destination is your web server. It can be anything, google.com or hdfcbank.com or Times of India, anything. So from here, now it is a dynamic application. So it also need to talk to app server. This is your web server. This is your app server. So here, from here, you'll be configuring a reverse proxy. So the source will be web server, destination will be app server. Let's say you are visiting hdfcbank.com. Okay, so it will generate all this thing by talking to database servers and everything. Page is ready. Now, because it's source and destination, from here, the request will come to web server. Now here again, the source and destination has to be changed. Right? So when it is coming, this is this one, but when it is leaving this gate, this is a different story. Say now this is now has to be replaced because now source and destination is based on this thing. So again, the request will go back to your laptop or desktop. So that is the reason this particular thing we call it as a reverse proxy. Might have heard about it, but yeah, reverse proxy. So where we have to configure that? At our web layer. So in this case, in our example, our extremely simple example, we install web server, app server in the same server. So let me go to my one of the web servers. By the way, I have multiple web servers, right? So why don't we stop one, because it will just avoid the confusion. So I'll go to this. Then I'll stop one web server. So then come back to the lighter one, which is running. I'll change the port number back to listen back to 80 only. Then start this particular service back, because it was earlier listening on 81 now, so just to change to 80. So is Tomcat also running in the same machine? Yeah, it is on the same machine, but if it's a different machine, I have to provide the IP address on this time. So temporarily I'm installed everything on the same machine. So let me go to http.com. So add the reverse proxy settings. Where can I add? Can I add in the same machine, or do you have any other setting in the conf.d folder? So let me go to etc http conf.d. Mostly generally it is not recommended edit the main http.conf. We'll try to see any other configuration files also there. all configuration files here, which is there in this folder, can be read by your HTTPD. So that is having an entry in htp.conf likewise. That please read all the configuration files here. So I can create a file called proxy.conf here and then add those settings. So
Raghu, just to tell you, I think the meeting is ending now.
oh yeah, we'll try to meet at the same link. Yeah, I think. So precautionarily we'll stop at this moment and then we'll meet at the same link.